Welcome to our program devoted to changing the conversation about our generation, Millennials. I'm Woody Joseph from the University of Florida.
And I'm Reese Johnson from the University of Missouri, Kansas City. We're the co-host, along with the 4 students joining us today from all around the country. We're part of a nationwide movement known as the National Millennial Community. Panelists, if we could please have you introduce yourselves.
I'm Wesley Bridges from Tennessee Tech University.
I'm Sean Hewitt from the University of Alaska Fairbanks.
I'm Sebag Alexanyan from California State University, Northridge.
I'm Adonis Shavarin from Eastern Oregon University.
And today we are looking into the issue of social media, and we'll discuss some benefits and drawbacks specifically as it relates to connectivity. Social media plays an integral role in our communication methods. I'm curious to know, Adonis, do you feel like social media helps bridge connections, or do you feel like it creates a divide?
That's a great question, Woody. And I believe that the key is using social media as something that enhances pre-existing relationships and creates a connection to new faces. For example, let's say, for example, our colleagues are far away. You know, we're not in contact with our family, former acquaintances, and even in the professional world. It gives us a platform and also a channel to communicate when they're far away and we're not necessarily in the moment, and we can still create some sort of an intimate relationship while still being away.
See, I see there being a bit of a disconnect with the social media movement right now. We're getting a lot of that screen touching of people, but we're not seeing that personal touch. Whether you're at a restaurant and you see a couple sitting down and they're just staring at their phones, or students in a classroom who are just sitting on their phone instead of paying attention to the professor. We need to find that balance of how much time we spend on social media, because I feel like we are disconnecting personally from each other, even though we're staying more connected to each other in a social media sense.
And would you both share your age just to give us a little bit perspective on like why you have the views that you have?
Absolutely. I'm 22 years old, a current senior in college, and I grew up with social media. I grew up with using social media as a form of connection, to communicate, to build relationships. So as someone that grew up with social media, that's all I've been knowing, so yeah.
And that's where the disconnect could come into play. Is for me, 33 years old, I didn't grow up with the internet. It came into my life when I was about 12 years old. I mean, we didn't start texting until I was about your guys' age at about 21. So that kind of gives you an idea of how different that is. So that could be where the disconnect comes into place. Like I was saying before, I think we just need, it's like a work-life balance. We need to find that social media life balance, so we're not always staring at our phones all the time.
Sure. I think that's a great point, Sean, and especially the thing to know about millennials, if we can all agree, is that we may be one generation, but there is significant diversity across life stage, across age, and where you're at. To continue the question of social media, millennials often make a big deal about authenticity and transparency, consistency when it comes to brands and corporations. Wes, I'm curious to know, do you feel like that same desire for authenticity extends to the social media world?
Yeah. Well, let me give a little bit of perspective on how I view social media. I'm definitely a consumer. So I don't really post pictures of myself or write tweets or anything. I do a lot of sharing and liking and just basic consumption. And my main platform is YouTube. And to use that as an example, I feel like it's a really good place where you can get exactly what you want out of it. So if you're going for more of a TV experience and just pure entertainment, you can find scripted things, you can find weird cat videos on the internet. But if you're going for more of a, you want to feel that authenticity, you want to feel the genuine connection with someone, whether they be like a daily vlogger or like some kind of a makeup guru, you can find that. So I think it just depends on what you're going for and kind of the platform that you're looking for.
Why are you primarily a consumer? Why don't you contribute?
That's a good question. I'm not 100% sure of why I do that. I'm just very uncomfortable with posting my own content. If I were to guess, I might say that I'm an only child, and so I grew up, by myself a lot, and I watch a ton of TV. So I'm used to just consuming media as opposed to being a part of it. So I feel like maybe as I got older, it's just kind of natural to just watch a lot of videos, look at little clips, and share things.
I could definitely echo that, Wesley. So the thing is, social media is a form and it's a way of expression, correct? So, and if you use it in, if you execute on it, I feel that you could use it in an efficient manner, such as, I don't necessarily produce content online, I endorse content. And what I mean by that, for example, on Facebook, I like to share content and comment on other people's comments, such as I'm basically endorsing their beliefs and they're in relation to my values.
I think that makes definitely a lot of sense. And interesting that you view content through a consumption lens, and it's not something that you interact with. It's not just viewing other people, but it sounds more like for you, it's entertainment, not as much connectivity, as Adonis talked about first. Would you agree that when it is more of an entertainment side of things, that it sounds like it's more up to the viewer and the consumer to determine whether or not it's authentic?
I think so. I think that you have to understand that a lot of people, this is their job. Sure. So just like if you were to watch a TV show on like a Saturday morning cartoon, you would look at these hosts of these shows and you would see them as they're not this person all the time. This is an actor. They're just the host of the show. And it's their job. And when they go home, they're someone totally different. And just because these medias are new and different, they can echo that same thing where they're just actors doing their job. But then there's also people who this is their life, and they get in their bedroom with their desk and their camera, and they just talk to you. And it's really an authentic and communication between you and the viewer. So I think you have to be wise to that to make sure you're not tricked into thinking that this is authentic when it's really not.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, and did make a little bit of a sweeping generalization about the millennial generation. When it comes to authenticity, brands, corporations, do you guys feel that it matters? Are you someone who wants that authenticity from a business? Savag, what do you think?
Honestly, definitely. I completely agree. You touched upon it a little earlier, mentioning how as individuals, the first thing that we're looking at is to find our true authenticity and find our true north. So just as individuals, we're searching for that uniqueness, same with the companies. They need to have that level of authenticity because it goes back to their values and their mission statements, what they really believe in. Because for example, when you talk to your fellow peers and ask them where they work for and if they really enjoy their job, you're going to see in the first couple of statements that they say whether they actually believe in what they're saying or if it's just the job that pays the bills. Yeah. And that ties back into the idea of wanting to have the authenticity at where you work, because then you could truly love the work that you do, and it really contributes to the culture of the organization, and it could just only improve by really serving your true north as a company.
Right. I think something else that we see tend to happen on social media is now the rise of digital personalities, social media influencers. In terms of following a leader, especially when it's your everyday leader, do you feel that you would prefer to follow someone online or you would prefer to follow them in person?
I think when we think of leadership, it's really interesting because at the end of the day, you need to get your audience what they want. And in terms of delivering it through whether it's in person or whether through an online platform, it really depends on what your audience is really viewing you through. Me personally, I love the personal and face-to-face conversation, just because especially when we're talking from a leadership standpoint, leaders carry charisma. And when they have their message, whatever it may be, when you're hearing it face-to-face like the conversation we're having today, it's so much more different than hearing it through a TED Talk or through a YouTube conversation, just because of the fact that that charismatic leadership really exudes from the individual. And then also when we talk about leadership when you're working at your work or your job, whether that's your supervisor, your CEO, your boss, you need to have that face-to-face relationship, whether that's once a week or once a month and still working from separate offices. And especially when you're establishing the relationship to begin with, it's so important to have that face-to-face conversation because that's how you build trust. And then you can use social media to tool it all in together and continue that relationship moving forward.
Right. I think that makes sense. Quick straw poll across the group, choosing an online or in-person leader to follow. Which would you prefer?
Absolutely. So to start off, I want to point out that saying it has to be a healthy balance between online communication and personal communication. But if it came down to my personal preference, I would say personal communication, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and I have to agree with Adonis on the personal. I believe like online, anybody can be who they want to be, cut and paste. The way you hear about stories about Instagram, how they make these special lives, but really behind the camera, it's not exactly the way it is, right? They're just trying to sell a product. So for me, I would prefer to talk to the person, meet them face to face, and just kind of see what they're like, and then make that move?
Yeah, I definitely want to say that it's pros and cons with both. I mean, I think, Savag, you hit it right on the head. It's great to have one, and it's great to have the other. If I had to choose, though, I would personally choose online. And I know that may be unpopular. Because imagine if you had to hear a lot from this person. If they spoke to you a couple times a week, it would require me to go to some town hall, or I'd have to go to wherever we could actually hear this message and see this person. And I would rather have it be digital, whether it be like little tweets or little videos they post online. That way, if I'm unable to go see it, I can still, just eat all of it all at once, maybe on a weekend or something, and I can get all the information. And another pro, I think, to being in person is that you can really give your feedback immediately, but you can still comment on it. You can, and then they'll respond whenever they can, and you still get the effect. It's just maybe not instantaneous.
Sure. So definitely some diversity across the panel. Woody, what do you think? What would you prefer?
I kind of agree with both. I would probably prefer in person, mainly because of the interpersonal communication. I prefer that, But out of convenience sake, I would probably like online.
Okay. I think that I agree as well, that I don't really know. And depending on the circumstance, I think that that's the important thing to remember about millennials overall. You may be able to slap a label on an age group, but all of us today, the simple question that we started with was social media, more connected, less connected. And we've gone a little bit around the table, but we haven't really been able to settle on something clear. And I think that that's an important lesson to remember about communication in general, is that it's not just what you're comfortable with, but when it comes to speaking with millennials and talking to millennials, talking with other people in general, you have to know and you have to remember that it's not just what you want to say, but you have to know how do they best hear you and what's the best way for them to listen. So the short and still confusing answer when it comes to social media, I think, is it depends, and you do have to have a contingency approach. And Woody and I want to thank our colleagues from across the country for joining us here in Los Angeles today. We also want to thank all of you in the audience for listening in on our conversation. If you would like to help us change the conversation about millennials in America, please visit our website at nationalmillennialcommunity.com. We would absolutely love to hear your thoughts.